Conversation, brought to you by White House Custom Color. I'm Jed Toffer, and today our show is called A Fresh Perspective. My guests are Vicki Toffer and Kari Campbell. Vicki is an award-winning photographer who's been in business for about 20 years, and Kari is an interior decorator who brings a fresh perspective into the mix. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hi.
So, Kari, can you give us a bit about your background and who you are?
Sure. I am a wife and mom and interior decorator, which is a relatively new endeavor for me. I have been doing this for a couple years, but was trained and have a degree in broadcast journalism. So I followed that career for several years and worked my way around the country doing that after I graduated with that degree and loved every minute of it, but knew that it was probably not something I was going to do for the long haul. I kind of started in smaller markets, as you do in this industry, and moved to Montana and Peoria, Illinois, and then finally back to Minneapolis, my hometown where I grew up. So when I got back here, I got married and was working in the industry here and had a great time and really loved it. But after the birth of my first child, decided that I was going to stay home for a while. So I did that, had a couple more kids, and as the youngest was about to get into school, I was thinking about what I wanted to do with my time. And I knew that over the past several years and all the moves and different homes I'd lived in, one of the things that brought me the most joy was decorating my home and having it feel like a space that reflected me and my family. And I just love that process. So started off this career doing it for friends and family and loved it and got lots of referrals and decided now's the time to jump in and make this my full-time gig and make it more than a hobby. So I've been doing it for about 2 years, and I'm just drinking from a fire hose, learning as much as I can, but absolutely love it and can't imagine doing anything else.
Your story sounds like 85% of every photographer
Really?
that's currently in the market.
That's our story.
Yeah.
I mean, really, yeah.
It seems like it's everybody's story these days.
Well, it's a passion.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. And who doesn't, I mean, you hear about people who don't feel like they're working when they're working, and
Right.
you can't believe you're getting paid to do
Right.
what you do. And that's exactly how I feel. And although I did love my last career, this just feels like it's natural for me, and it is a passion, Vicki. Like you said, it's something that just brings me joy, and when I have free time, that's what I want to do. So.
Well, it's interesting. I can attest for the record that you have an absolutely beautiful home.
Oh, thank you.
So I get it. You know, I think you walk into your home and it's such a wonderful space. So it makes sense. Like initially I didn't know that that's what you did.
Right.
And then when I found that out, I was like, yep, that works. That makes total sense.
I think too, part of my design philosophy and what is maybe relevant to this conversation is that I feel like when in your home, it should feel like a sanctuary. It should be a reflection of who you are, what you value, places you've traveled, things that you love and care about. And per this conversation, having photos of the people you love around you is a huge part of that. I can't think of anything more personal in a space than photos of the people you love the most.
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense, actually. You know, and ignoring the business piece for a second, and kind of in that vein, then how important are portraits to you as a wife and a mom and a daughter and a sister?
Mm-hmm. Well, they're extremely important, and they're. I love when I walk around my house and I just catch a glimpse of my kids hugging each other. I've got a picture of that in our entryway, and just showing that to people who come to my home. My home is a place where I want it to be welcoming and nurturing for everybody who comes in. And I want people to feel like they get to know me a little bit better when they're in my home, and to have portraits and photos of places that I've been and that I love and that are meaningful to me and to my family helps accomplish that for me. And it helps me feel like I'm conveying who I really am, and I'm surrounding myself with things that I love and memories that are wonderful.
Then, as an interior decorator, can you talk about the importance of integrating wall portraits and photographic imagery and products into a space, like when you're actually working with one of your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first things that I ask people when I go in and do an assessment kind of what they're looking for is I ask them the pieces and the artwork and the photos that are have to stay and that are most important in their home. And oftentimes they say these family photos. I want a gallery wall. I don't want these photos going away. I want this place to look like it's my home still. I don't want you to come in and make it, something that you think is pretty. It has to be a reflection of them. So I think it's extremely important, and it's so easy to do. It's not a difficult task, especially with family portraits and with photos of places. You don't have to go to expensive galleries and drop a couple $1,000s or $20,000 on a piece of art.
Right.
It's something that you can relatively affordably do, and it's a perfect reflection of who you are and what's important to you.
So do you find that a lot of the people that you even if it's an initial consultation or a walkthrough, you find that people do value their family portraits quite a bit. Like that's at the top of the list.
Absolutely. I have people who I come in and they've got a gallery wall up of family photos. And while I might suggest different frames for them or a different layout or a different place in their home that we could put it, it's important to them that those pictures are around and that we don't just get rid of them. And I do advocate updating, though. I tell my clients, if these have been here for several years, your
those
kids
are from 1977.
Your kids aren't really recognizable anymore. It's time to update these.
Or you have 3 new kids that aren't
exactly.
in the photo.
Which I've been guilty of.
Well, and this is just, I'm sitting here, just my wheels are spinning right now. Like, I'm real big into relationship marketing with our business. That's how we have grown our business over the last 20 years. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, what in the world? Like, photographers need to team up with interior decorators. And like, what if, maybe it's just one relationship with one interior decorator, maybe it's multiple, but basically, what if every client that you have, I provide, it costs you nothing. Like, I provide a free portrait session that you can gift your client. And then I know you're going to help them in choosing and decorating their home with those images. So really that's why I call it relationship marketing. It's a win for you. It's a
Absolutely.
gift. It's a gift to your client. But it's obviously a win for me as well. And we've done that with, other markets and gifted with, home builders and car dealerships and things like that. So the concept's not new, but how fabulous to do that with an interior decorator.
Yeah, and I love the way your brain works like this, Vicki, because you are so good at this type of stuff. And it's a no-brainer once you bring it up. I mean, it just makes perfect sense on my end as well. Number one, I'm going to help them make their space look beautiful with the images that you provide. And number two, you're going to hopefully gain a client who will be a repeat customer as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a win-win-win. I like the triangle win.
Yeah,
not
scenario.
a win-win, but a win-win.
Right,
Yes.
not a win-win, but a win-win-win. So you both, okay, I have this in my notes, but we haven't really discussed it. You both do see a solid potential for this. We have talked about relationship marketing a lot and how relationships are such an important piece. Definitely between us and our clients, that's always been a big piece, and it sounds like that's definitely true in your industry as well, Kari. But we're also talking about relationships between photographers and interior decorators.
Yeah,
and
between two professionals.
And how expounding on it's like I'll scratch your back, you scratch my back, to a certain degree. But can you expound on that a little bit? Like if there's a photographer listening to this, what would be the best way, if I'm a photographer, to approach you? Well, don't act like it's me. Act like it's Vicki, because then I would just come across as creepy. Let's talk about if Vic. How would you advise Vicki to come to you with an idea like this?
Well, just as she just did. I mean, it until I met Vicki and became friends with the two of you, it hadn't crossed my mind to build a professional relationship this way. Mm-hmm. But it makes perfect sense. So if you have ideas, definitely reach out to interior design professionals in your community. And another way that we've talked about too is there are a lot of interior decorators and interior designers who need professional photographs taken of the spaces that they design.
Oh, right.
Because we have nothing
for your own
to show.
portfolio.
Absolutely. We have nothing to show for ourselves. on our websites and social media unless we have good-looking professional photographs. And especially with the rise in social media and the importance of it these days in running a business, to have a professional take it just sets you way above your competition.
Right.
If they're just taking it with their point and shoot cameras or their iPhones or whatever from their home. So even if you are a portrait photographer and you are looking into or interested in expanding your horizons, I would say market yourself to interior decorators and interior designers and say, hey, let me come and take some shots of your space. And the designer or decorator will then help, style it and make it look exactly the way they want to make it. They want it to look in their shots. But like I said, if it's not a professional photo, you can see it. I mean, you can tell the difference, obviously, on social media and on websites.
It is interesting. If you're not thinking about it, it's something that you swipe right past. But when something is professionally done, I'm speaking for myself, but it certainly gets me to stop.
Absolutely.
And look, and that's really all that's really what you want people to do. Just stop and take a look.
Stop and look, right.
That's about as much as we can ask for with as much noise that's out there right now. That's an interesting take, though. So for you to have somebody come to you and actually offer that as part of the relationship, in the relationship marketing piece, that's extremely valuable to you.
Absolutely.
And then as a photographer, what is something out of the relationship that you like? What would you go and pitch Kari if you were going to talk to her about this?
Well, I mean, Kari specifically, has hired me to do a couple jobs like this for her new website. And,
but if you didn't know her and you're just approaching her.
Yeah. So, and thinking about that, I think you could approach it a few different ways. And just from experience, one of the things I would recommend, I know a lot of photographers out there, besides just portraits, maybe you love to photograph landscapes or still lifes or other types of artwork that an interior decorator or designer would want to use in their design process with their clients. And so, again, going back to those relationships, we've developed many relationships over the years with different home stores, stores that sell like really high-end furniture or artwork for your home or just cute little knickknacks for your home, but a type of store where interior decorators and designers will shop for their clients. And so by having a relationship with this home store, my work is on display there. I photograph clients in those spaces. That might be a really good way to meet some of these designers and decorators, is maybe a relationship starts with an actual a store or a location. So that would be, one avenue.
And so how do you prep? I mean, you want to make sure your website's in order. You want to make sure that you have a portfolio to show off to said decorator. Right?
I think the big thing, there's a couple things. I think, number one, it's always about not being afraid of no as an answer, right? I mean, like we've approached a ton of people and it doesn't always work out.
Right.
And so not being afraid to try something. And the relationship piece of it is you always need to think about, what do I have to gain? What do I have to lose? Maybe it's something that initially you approach a designer or decorator and you're doing that work for free initially, like maybe one home. Hey, I'll photograph this home for you. Yeah. And you kind of try that relationship out. I think you have to look at, the importance of that designer or decorator knowing the value of this. So if they want to hire you in the future for this type of job, it's not just something that's going to be free, but maybe you're trying to build your business and you do have the time and you do some of that work. You help each other out.
This is great. A lot of this conversation is organic, which is perfect. But this actually sounds really good to you, Kari, as something that makes sense for you, even from a business perspective.
Absolutely. And going back to what you were saying, Vicki, about potentially, going to home stores. I mean, I can't tell you how many clients request when I'm asking them what type of artwork they want in their home. They say, we travel to Chicago a lot, or we, love going to the Cape, or so they want to get images of that type of those scenes in their home too. So if you're a landscape photographer or a travel photographer or someone who takes images like that you are willing to sell, that's a great an innovative way to pitch to interior design professionals as well.
To have that content, right? Even if you're a portrait photographer and you go on vacation.
Right. Use your talents, take some beautiful photos.
Yeah, and
add them to your portfolio.
Right. I love that. Let's talk about, so that's kind of the marketing piece. Let's talk about the selling piece a little bit. And just regarding tips for people when selling to their clients. Because here we have photographers, and if we make the correlation between, you being with the client and having ideas, and they're hiring you because you're their professional and you know what you're doing, and so they're expecting you to be able to provide them with that service. But photographers in the same boat, someone hires them to photograph their family, and then it's a matter of, well, now what, right? So what should I do? What sort of tips do you have for photographers when, let's say they get to a point where, sometimes they're promoting the gallery or showing the gallery online, or sometimes they're actually sitting down in an in-person sale with people in person and going over the imagery for different options. What sort of tips do you have for somebody to sell their work?
Sure. Well, a couple things come to mind. First of all, I would say go in with confidence that you know what you're doing, because they have hired you as a professional. They've come to you because they need help and they need your experience. They want your experience, or they wouldn't have hired you.
Right.
So I would say that would be number one, is just convey confidence that you know what you're doing. And then number two is educating them. I think a lot of times for me, it's educating on the value of spending a little bit more on a sofa from Studio X as opposed to Studio Y, because this is what you're going to get. So just educating them and saying, this is the value that I bring. This is the value that doing this or printing this or framing this is going to bring to your home, because a lot of times people, it's not on their radar. They're not thinking about it. They don't know. They're not doing the research that we're doing. So in order to educate them and to just let them know the value of the product that you're offering and the expertise that you're bringing, I think is important.
And so you have your ducks in a row
Before
beforehand.
I go. Oh, absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
You have a pretty good idea of, like, even going into, like, when it comes right down to it, right? Kind of the point of sale piece. You've done the consultation, you've done walkthroughs.
Yep.
You've done kind of all the work on the front end, and then it's where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
And you go in ready.
I go in ready, and I go over in my mind some of the objections they might have and what I would say to that. So I've kind of rehearsed it in my head. And you can't force people to buy something that they don't want to buy, or it's not in their budget or whatever.
Right.
But at least I go in as prepared as I can be. I think about what their objections might be or their concerns might be, so that I'm ready to
I like that piece.
to address that.
I like being ready for the objections.
Yeah.
Just when you were talking about educating the client, like that is such a big piece. I feel like for years, that's how we've approached the sales process when we've been teaching photographers how we sell. And I think that is just such a huge piece, because I actually feel like we're doing our clients a disservice if we're not educating them. And I love the piece about, being confident and our clients hiring us as the professionals, because they wouldn't hire us otherwise, right? Like we know our clients have iPhones and they can take photos, and your clients can go to the local, Home Goods and go buy things, but they need help. They want you to hold their hand. They want your recommendations. They want, they love what you do, and they want you to do that for them. And so I just think, it's interesting, because what we both sell, it's not just, you're not just selling, the sofa, and like, I'm not just selling a printed 8x10. I mean, they're paying for that expertise, and it's hard to, like, how do you quantify and qualify that?
Right.
Because it's, really, it's your taste, it's how you see things, it's your art. And it's really the same, I feel like, for both industries.
Sure.
Well, it's a product and a service.
Right. It's both.
Absolutely.
And kind of surrounded by an experience.
Right. And I truly believe that I'm not selling furniture. I'm selling the feeling they're going to get when they're living in that space.
Perfect.
Oh, I love it. That is, I mean, we are just right on the same page.
Well,
because like, think about it. Like, sure, like what the piece you said, where like somebody knows they can hire you and you can come in and you're going to make their home look beautiful. Maybe just like it's on a Parade of Homes home, but is it going to feel like their home?
Exactly.
And I think that's where, we're the same, like with that. That's awesome.
how do you deal with what, some of those objections that you were mentioning? Let's allow me to get specific
Sure.
for a second regarding, in particular, price.
Yep.
How do you deal with something like a sticker shock situation?
Yeah. Well, I oftentimes prepare them before I show them the numbers. And I just say, this, I know you've got this budget is X, just so you know, in order to get what you want, it's probably not going to be that. It'll be a little bit more. It always is. So be prepared for that.
Right.
And then when they see it and they immediately balk and say no, I just have to say, if this is what if this is the feeling that you want in your home, if the experience you want to have that you've told me coming into this, we're going to be closer to this number. So I often say, are you willing to be pushed a little bit? Can I push you a little bit in this area?
Nice.
Because
that's a good technique.
I like to ask them for permission, because if they say no, then I know it's a done deal, and I'm not going to push it anymore. But if they're willing to hear me out some more and help give me space to give them the reasons and the advantages to buying what I'm trying to sell them, then I go for it. The worst they can say is no, right?
Right.
So give it a shot.
Do you have people asking you for discounts? I just saw that again online. A photographer said a doctor wanted a discount because, he's a doctor.
Right. I haven't yet. I am a member of several interior design Facebook groups, and I know that it does happen to a lot of interior design professionals, and I would imagine in the photography industry as well. But it's easier for me to say rather than being in the situation, but I think you got to hold firm, because you got to provide, it's showing that you believe you're worth what you're charging.
Yes.
Well, and don't you think there's that piece? Like, I have this conversation, honestly, with my employee, like us right now living in Minnesota. She's back in Illinois. She's doing a lot more of those conversations with my clients.
Yeah.
So it puts her in that position. And, I tell her, I'm like, I mean, I know you can't say this maybe directly to the client this way, but like, I won't be in business. If you want my service, this is what I do. And
right.
This is what it costs. I mean, you're a mom, you're a wife. Like, we have other things that we value in our lives more that are more important, even though this is a passion and something we love, that we're not willing to sacrifice that by giving discounts and discounts and discounts and doing it for nothing and for free. And like, we all know there's a danger in that when you make a passion your job, because you love it and it doesn't feel like work, and it can sometimes be easy to get in a position where you're doing it and you might feel challenged to do it for free.
I do. I respect
discount.
and appreciate the not willing to concede.
Yeah, I
mindset.
was going to say too, I think that especially for people starting out, that's one of the ways that you can, for lack of a better term, like stake your ground and say, I'm doing this. This is what I'm worth. This is, it might convey to some people, if you do give them a discount, number one, they're going to ask for it every time. They're going to expect it every time.
Yep.
And they're going to tell their friends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And number two, they're, like you said, Jed, you respect someone who's a professional and says, this is what I charge. If it doesn't work for you, then we'll find someone else.
When you have a client referring you to one of their friends, you don't want them to be referring you to one of their friends and leading with, I got 30% off.
Of course not.
You want them to lead with, she is the best interior decorator and she is the coolest person. And we had a blast doing this.
Right.
And they're not even talking about the money.
Like
the money's not even an issue.
I think about a conversation I had with you not that long ago, and I think we both were in the same boat. It was fall and we were busy, and we both were like, we're kind of busier than we want to be. So if you look at that statement from both of us, then it's like, well, why would you discount it? Like, there's enough people and enough clients to service. You can only handle so many anyway that there's not a need to discount.
And I think too, it's great to refer others. If someone says, I can't afford you, and you say, oh, great, maybe this person, this designer, this photographer, would be more in your ballpark.
Right.
And share the love. Like you said, what's the saying? All boats rise together.
Oh, a rising tide raises all ships.
Thank you.
Right.
That's what I'm looking for. Yes, we help each other out. We refer, and you hope then that they'll refer you someday too.
Right. If they have a job that comes along that they can't handle, or they're too busy because they're so inexpensively priced,
or
they have
know
so much work.
It fits what you do. You know, I mean,
absolutely.
Right. Your specialty.
It's that relationship piece too. I mean, it goes back to the relationship piece again.
Yep.
I think that we've solved a lot of the world's problems today.
Amen.
You know what? I really appreciate your time. This was an awful lot of fun.
Thank you, Jed. I've had a great time. Thank you for having me.
This definitely was a fresh perspective. I'm surprised and delighted really at the parallels. I guess I'd never thought about that. But so like if you would have changed a couple words out, I would have thought that I was just having a conversation with a photographer. So there's just so much that applies.
Right.
It's really quite interesting to me, and I think it'll come across great. Because we have a lot of the same challenges.
Yeah, well, I think too, as entrepreneurs, a lot of photographers and many decorators too are running your own business, and so it's there are a lot of parallels there as well.
And just one thing that I just thought of quickly when you were asking about that relationship between a photographer and a designer, one thing that a photographer and a designer could do really easily together is the designer could, with their iPhone even, take a photo of a space as you're doing your designing and planning. If you provide that to the photographer, we do this already in our business, can pre-design wall groupings and like actually having, that's part of the education process.
I love that.
Actually having something to show
your
client. Yeah.
That's a fantastic idea. We should have led with that.
I think too that we have to remember that as photographers and as creative people, we see things differently than our clients do. So while we may be able to visualize what it's going to look like, at the end, they can't. So having that sort of visualization for them that you can provide them is extremely valuable, because we kind of take for granted sometimes that other people get it and can see it in their mind
Show
like we do.
Show it to sell it, right? Show it to sell it.
Right.
Fantastic. Well, I hope that you as a listener have taken lots of notes, because we just went through an awful lot of content. Ladies, thank you for joining me on this conversation.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time and efforts. It was an absolute pleasure. And we will be seeing you again